Clairobscur Expedition 33, a turn-based RPG developed by Sandfallinteractive, released back in late April of last year. Now, for the most part, I'm quite up to date with most of my releases, but I in fact had never even heard of this game until I was persuaded by many people praising the hell out of it a few months later. Not knowing what the game was about, who the characters were, the style of the gameplay I was going to be playing, I was going into this completely blind, and all I can say is wow, just wow. Obviously, I could say more, but why spoil it? So let's not waste any more time and let's tackle the 56 trophies that this game has to offer. Welcome to Clairobscur Expedition 33's Platinum playthrough. We start off the game in the gorgeous setting of Lumiere, where we meet Gustave and Maëlle. Bonding over some rock throwing, we see that Gustave has a very special rose for a very special person. So the two set out to find said person, but Maëlle notices that Gustave seems a bit stressed, so they agree to a nice friendly duel. A turn-based system with countering and parrying added to spice things up a bit. There's much more to it, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Feeling good about our swift victory, not knowing the horrors that are still yet to come, we eventually find Sophie. Although she accepts the rose, the two seem very distant with each other, as if there is something else that's stopping them from being together. They then join the rest of the city into enjoying the festivities, including this creepy ass looking mime who appears to be trapped in a box. Now, he is of some interest to me, since I get not one, not two, but 3 trophies to kick this game off. The first one for simply just stunning the mime, but because I used Gustave's overcharge ability, I also got the overcharge trophy. Finally, once I defeated the mime, I obtained the trophy A Peculiar Encounter. Now, unfortunately, we can't relish in that win for long, since the reasons for everyone gathering here was because it's time for the gamage. Well, what's a gamage, you might be asking? Well, looking out at that massive monolith in the distance, we witness this giant being who changes the number to 33. Then a bunch of people start disintegrating into petals, including our beloved Sophie. So to sum up what exactly just happened, every year the paintress changes the number on that monolith, which pretty much kills anyone that matches that age. Then on the same day, a group of expeditioners, in this case Gustave and Expedition 33, will head out to try and kill her to break the cycle. Clearly something stronger is at large here, considering there have been many failed expeditions, but with me behind the controller, we head out to sea to complete the prologue, unlocking the trophy Lumiere. The expedition arrive to a not so friendly looking area, as they spot an elderly gentleman emerging from the fog. Maybe he knows the way. Let's ask him for directions. Ah, damn it, Alan. You had to call the dude old. Then, within an instant, the entire expedition get ambushed as one by one they are brutalized and killed, leaving Gustave by himself to suffer the same fate. Well, at first I thought that, but soon after he awakes, all alone and unsure as to his whereabouts. Okay then, that is a lot of death, and seems like Gustave wants to join them thinking he's all alone. Luckily for us, Lune shows up at the perfect time and stops him from taking the easy way out. Now, with Lune in our party, we get to learn how she plays in combat, since they're all very different from one another. She uses elemental stains that can be stored after using certain attacks, to then improve the damage, or to add extra benefits to another attack, so it really mixes up the combat to keep it interesting. Learning this quite quickly allowed me to defeat my first chromatic boss, which are just basically tougher versions of normal enemies, and I did it flawlessly, which unlocked the professional trophy. We soon find a message that says that Maëlle has been taken to the weird corals, completing our first official area, unlocking the trophy Spring Meadows. Now we are then thrown into the open world part of this game, where we can visit optional areas for any bonus items to help in our journey, or we can make and visit camp, which acts as our hub area. So we head to the Flying Waters, which by the way is just a mesmerizing location to be in. And this is only like the 3rd area we've been in. But I'm more focused on breaking open this paint cage, which also gives me a trophy. We then come across this weird door that doesn't seem to be connected to a building. Huh, that's weird. But then they get pulled in to find themselves in some sort of mansion. And a pretty fancy looking one too. Oh look, Maëlle's here too. She doesn't remember anything about what happened on the beach, but apparently she woke up here and was being cared for by this menacing looking character, the curator. Well, he's kept Maëlle safe, so I guess we can trust him for the time being. Hey, talking about trusting new people, meet Noko the Gestural. He looks more like a paintbrush to me, but he is much more than that. He actually serves as one of the many merchants that you'll find across the game, so make sure you're thorough in your spendings. Pressing onwards, we run into this level's boss, Goblu, who at first seems like a threat, but I was able to get some good hits in, with me also obtaining the trophy Perfect Float for consuming stains 4 times in a row with Lune, completing Flying Waters and unlocking its trophy. The trio then return to camp to rest up, but I've got some other matters to attend to since the curator is here as well. He acts as an upgrade vendor where I consumed a Lumina point, allowing me to assign more pictos to each character, giving them better stats, and also upgrading the level of my weapon once. Well, that's one way to earn my trust. Then you can also check up on the rest of the expedition, which doing this for the first time also unlocks the Curious trophy. Now, as we enter the next area, the Ancient Sanctuary, we are looking for another gestural called Golgra, who knows of a way for us to traverse the sea that separates the paintress. We get through this area pretty quickly as we face and defeat the ultimate Saka Patate. Now, the Gestrals are a peaceful bunch. Well, by peaceful, I mean that any problem they have, they tend to solve it by fighting. It's just in their nature. Now, I did manage to speak to nearly every single one, that being like 50 plus Gestrals. I feel like I should have at least got some sort of reward for it. After doing all that, we then meet Golgra, the Gestral Chief. She has very little to say to us since we first had to prove ourselves in a fight against someone called the Stranger. Turns out it's actually someone called CL, another member of Expedition 33. Now, we absolutely demolish her without breaking the sweat, which now means that she also joins our party. Becoming the champions, Golgra points us towards someone called Esquier. Whilst also giving us the password to his home, we complete the Gestral village and gain his trophy. So, first of all, we choose to rest up a camp again, filling CL in on what's happened. Then Mael suddenly sees some sort of vision, discovering a voiceless young girl who almost mirrors her, but also the man from the beach. A bit less hostile than before. Apparently then being blamed for what happened on the beach, she returns back to normal as we all sit here and wonder what that was all about. Speaking of beaches, as I tend to wander off and explore these open world-esque games, I came across my first Gestral beach. There are a few of these that all offer different challenges. In this example, this was a parkour challenge. Now these can be a bit annoying to complete, but they are worth it, and I don't just mean for the trophy that we'll get later on in the game. Soon after that, we arrive at Esquier's nest, and once gaining entry into his lair, we finally get to meet this big lump of all that is happiness, and also my favourite character. Now Esquier is our solution to travelling across the sea, but apparently he's not strong enough to carry the four of them. Look at the size of him. He can in fact get stronger though by us finding one of his rocks called Flory that has been taken by the evil Francois. So popping over next door, Francois, who is a turtle by the way, denies us the rock, so in fitting fashion we defeat him in a duel. Then once returning the Flory back to Esquier, he agrees to help us, which unlocks both the Legend and Esquier's Nest trophies for completing this area. So with Esquier now acting as our raft, we head into the Stone Wave Cliffs where he also shows off his own powers. Bro can do that but yet needs a rock to carry us. Maybe he is quite lazy overall. We push through the Stone Wave Cliffs without any problems, but are hit with a roadblock after the group get ambushed by the Lamp Master. Okay, that's too many hands for my liking. Now this is the first boss that I've encountered that has a slight gimmick to it, which I'll find out that more bosses have later in the game. So his first phase is simple enough to get past after learning his attacks, but then his second phase is a little more unique. The 4 lanterns that light up around him must be shot in that same order that they light up, thus negating a powerful charge move that is still parryable, but I prefer to avoid it in general. After a few attempts, the expedition defeat the beast and obtain Esquier's Flory, which now means we can set sail towards the paintress, or so we thought.
Like I always say, it's not about the rock, it's more about
Not knowing the white-haired man's intentions, Gustave does everything he can to protect Mael.
for those who come after. Right?
Even with his overcharge being useless and with one last-ditch effort, it just isn't enough. He explains that this action was done purely to benefit Mael, but looking broken and destroyed over Gustave's death, the white-haired man goes to finish the job, but is interrupted by this badass-looking stranger. He scares the man into walking away, before popping the Stonewave Cliffs trophy. So then the group head back to the camp along with the stranger. He recovers Gustave's hand and tells the group that he was part of the very first expedition, that being Expedition 0, and that the white-haired man was his commander Renoir. Unaffected by the gamage, Renoir believes that his immortality comes from the paintress, hence what happened on the beach and just now. So the stranger agrees to help the group in defeating the paintress, and with one menacing name drop, they continue on their journey. Now with Verso taking Gustave's place, which I can tell Mael isn't a big fan of, he has a very cool and powerful combat style called Perfection. So each time Verso performs a successful strike, his Perfection rank increases. So the higher it is, the more damage and abilities he can perform. Luckily for my first fight with him, I was able to get to S rank, which popped the Perfection trophy. The group's next hurdle is the Forgotten Battlefields, which is the unfortunate resting place of thousands of expeditioners. Yeah, let's hope we don't add to that pile. Verso mentions of a tranquil haven that would be perfect to bury Gustave, but something else stands in our way. Damn, the music really did this boss justice. Surrounded in the blood of the fallen expeditioners, the duelist isn't going to let us go without a fight. Now, his first phase isn't anything too complex, but his second phase kicks things up a notch. Now with 2 swords and combo attacks more deadlier than before, it did catch me out a few times, but I only died once to the warrior. I'm on hard difficulty, by the way. So the group cleans themselves up as they make it to the surface to find the place Verso mentioned. He leads them to it whilst they lay Gustav's remains, saying their goodbyes with each of them promising to not let his name die in vain, and that nothing would stop them from killing the paintress. The group then rests up as Verso says that they must recruit an old friend of his, since we will need his knowledge and fighting skills to take her down. So we head to Monoko Station. Now we're in luck, since as soon as you reach the station, we actually run straight into Monoko himself. Another Gestural, but definitely the most unique looking one we have met so far. And just like any Gestural, he invites us to a duel, which we seamlessly beat him first time. Verso then pleads for Monoko to join us after some very encouraging words.
That's true. There will be a lot of fights. Exactly. I'll be in then.
Monoko then joins the expedition, so with that victory we obtain both the Expedition 33 trophy for unlocking all playable characters, and then shortly after Monoko Station for completing the area. Now because they can't reach the paintress straight away, they must destroy her heart first, which is located somewhere in Old Lumiere. This attempt to make a path then splits the group up, where Monoko, Xiao and Lune find out some crucial information about Verso that he's been hiding.
Is this true?
Whereas Verso and Mael stumble upon a familiar looking mansion where inside they find a being who resembles a lot of similarities to the Curator. Then of course when we're thinking we are making some sort of progress, Renoir shows up again where we find out that he is in fact Verso's father. Wow, plot twist, am I right? I mean, they look very alike, so it was kind of obvious. Now as expected, the boss fight, the music, the setting all just matched up perfectly. Good thing this time we could actually do some actual damage to him. Now although the fight was challenging at times, as you can see by my amazing timings with my dodges and parrying, yeah, I really need to get better at that. We end up depleting his health bar pretty quickly, but he doesn't even have a scratch on him, as then with one very powerful attack he lands a killing blow onto one of the group members, that being Noko. In frustration, Renoir and Verso collide with their blades, and it pauses time, where Mael comes face to face with the mysterious girl that once removing her mask, it looks awfully like her, before disappearing with the mansion and unlocking the Old Lumiere trophy. So as the expedition regroup at camp, mourning in Noko's death, it's not all bad since Gestuals can actually be revived, but only parts of their former selves will be kept. Verso then informs the group that the Curator can make a powerful weapon that can break through the barrier which is protecting the paintress, and that it can be made by killing 2 axins, which are giant monstrous beings that live on some of the islands below the monolith, so that is their next goal. So because of this daunting task ahead, I did make sure that I did some optional boss grinding, which did result in me reaching level 33. That unlocked the Expeditioner trophy. So by this point I was more than ready for the axins. So the first out of the 2 axins I decided to face was Serene, which was located in this massive Colosseum-like area. Now there is an optional boss called the Tissia that actually makes the Serene fight a lot easier, but I was tricked by my Twitch chat to avoid the fight. Now the Serene boss fight herself involved a mix of both melee and range attacks that did take me a minute to learn the timing of. Then her minions having their turn and doing some damage, and just to top things off, the Tissia which was giving her armor throughout the entire fight. And after a few jump attacks, it was enough damage to finish her off, checking off the first axin and unlocking its trophy. They celebrate their victory back at camp with some piano playing by both Verso and Mael. See, even Eske is breaking out the moves, but they know that they are far from done. The second axin was located in the Visages area, which they arrive and they are greeted by this mysterious being called the Mask Keeper. Now as menacing as he might seem, he does actually aid the group by telling them about 3 different masks that we had to defeat, those 3 being anger, joy and sadness, each having their own setting which actually reflects their emotions. It was a cool little touch. So once all 3 were defeated, we were ready to face Visages. Now at first this boss was nowhere near as tough as Serene, since we were able to defeat it first time. But of course there's always a catch, as we actually discover that that wasn't the true axin, the Mask Keeper was. Hey, I knew there was something fishy about him. Now as much as I wanted him to be a formidable foe, I had no problem in beating him first time, which that unlocked the second axin trophy. Yeah, a bit of a letdown, but trust me, we've got some cooler bosses coming up later. So with both parts needed, we brought them to the Curator, who combines them to create this badass looking sword, fitting for Mael to wield. So knowing that they are reaching their final destination, they decide to enjoy their last night with some drinks. And where would they get that, you might ask? Well, from inside Eske. I mean, where else would it come from?
Had a chat.
I'm sorry, Verso.
So the next morning, the team reach the barrier and break it down, allowing a clear entrance to the paintress, but as they try to inflict any sort of damage to her, it does absolutely nothing. But they do see the lady from the mansion, as she creates some sort of portal which then the group follows her through, unlocking the monolith trophy too. They attempt to scale the monolith, which takes them through many of the previous areas that we'd once encountered, you know, like the spring meadows, the flying waters, and the ancient sanctuary, even through a much more hostile looking Lumiere. After a literal few hours of playing, we finally make it near the top, where blocking our path is of course Renoir once more.
Then so be it.
Now, as I expected for a round 2 fight, it's very similar to when we fought him in Old Lumiere, but this time he also summons this dark creature, which for the most part is pretty easy to read his attacks. So since we were already experienced against him, it wasn't long until we put him down for good. With a final attack attempt from him, the curator shows up to help Mael in getting a justice for Gustave, fading Renoir into petals, and with that done, there was nothing blocking them from reaching the peak and facing the paintress. You'd think with how long and tiring this journey had been, surely there would have been some sort of catch, but no, this was it. It was the paintress versus Expedition 33. Now, as you expected, the first few attempts ended pretty quickly. I mean, come on, I can't make this too easy for a final fight, can I? I'd say that even doing the maximum amount of damage against her in a single attack, it only took away a very small part of her health, so consistency was key with surviving this fight. At least I had the soundtrack to jam away to. Eventually depleting her health, this fight was far from over, since she summons the axins to help her in her second phase. But lucky for us, the main man Esquier comes in to aid us. With the help of a new rock called Sori, which unlocks the ability to fly with us on his back, it was time for phase 2, where of course she is even more rapid with her attacks. Plus the axin has a ranged attack that hits the entire team for a lot of damage, and I died quite a few times too. So after many restarts and many attempts, which was worth it since I got the wheel control trophy for using 4 upgraded skills in a row as Monoko, we kill the axin as the paintress lays hurt and wounded, but the fight isn't over as we begin a phase 3, but it's a pretty sad end. She chooses to only heal Mael, so as she is defenseless, the team ends the fight once and for all, and she too, like Renoir, fades away with the number of the monolith disappearing, meaning that this expedition was finally over. They return back to Lumiere with the town celebrating in their success, although Mael brings back Gustave's journal, being the only piece of him left, to make it pretty obvious to the children and his sister that he didn't make it. Verso then reads a letter from his sister which throws the biggest twist in a video game that I've ever witnessed. Turns out, although we were right in killing Renoir, who always painted death, the paintress being Verso's mother always painted life, and in ridding her only caused more death as another gommage occurs, which this affects everyone including Mael. Then yet another twist happens where we find out that all of what we just played wasn't real. In fact, it was a canvas created by Mael's mother Eileen to keep the memory of Verso alive, since he was the one who died in the fire, with Mael surviving but with some terrible scars. It is crazy to think that all of those stories that connected the expedition members and the friends and foes we met along the journey were all just a creation by one person. Now, because the parents are still trapped in the painting, Clair asks Alicia to enter the painting to free them both. But this time she is sporting some sick new silver hair, which matches the painted Verso too. The pair then run into the curator who, as you guessed it, is the real Renoir, since the version that we fought earlier was his painted version. Now, because the expedition defeated Eileen, Renoir requests us to help erase the canvas so that she would be freed, with that also erasing any part of Verso that still remained, but Alicia refuses. So as Renoir attempts to stop her, she escapes with the help of Monoko and Esquier, also unlocking the Back to the Lumiere trophy. Then, channeling her paintress abilities back at camp, she brings back Luna and Ciel as she fills them in the whole situation. Now, as you can tell by all of what's just happened, we are pressing on towards the end of the game. So before we return back to face Renoir one final time, I had a few loose ends to tie up, which mainly involved around the rest of the expedition. Each of them have their own relationship level, and if you raise them all to level 7, that being the maximum, then we can get a bunch of trophies and some new gradient attacks. Now, some of them just require to have conversations with. So with Ciel, who she and Verso developed a bit of a saucy connection between one another, once they'd finished falling around, you'll unlock the Ciel trophy. Then with Esquier, we make a rock that matches Francois. So then the two take it to him, which after another pointless and very easy fight against him, we trade that rock with Yuri, which now means that 1, we can swim underwater, and 2, we get the plane, train and submarine trophy for unlocking all of Esquier's abilities. Then soon after that, his relationship trophy as well. Then on to Monoko's last mission, where we visit a place called the Sacred River in hopes to revive Noko. Now, apparently there's a queue for these sorts of things, so we try and skip our way through the order, but Golgret is here to stop us. So in pure gestural fashion, we challenge her to a duel, and may I say, this fight sucks. The more I kept dying to her, the less I felt like I was actually learning about her attacks. I mean, make it make sense, because I can't. We do eventually defeat her, so she lets us revive Minoko, but as sad as it is to say, he doesn't really remember much of his previous life, which hurts Minoko deeply. Golgo suggests to have him stay at the village to grow a bit, so Minoko says his goodbye, which we then return to the camp, where he thanks us for our help and unlocks his relationship trophy. Then, as I was making my way to start Lune's mission, I actually stumbled across my last gestural beach area, which after completing the final minigame, I unlocked the gestural games trophy. So for Lune, she had requested us to find her parents, as she believed that they were still alive somewhere behind the Cyrene area. So then this required us to defeat the chromatic glissando, which did prove to be fairly difficult at times, but seeing as I'd already maxed out some of the relationships, I was able to use some level 3 gradient attacks. Doing this for the first time did unlock the chromatic proficiency trophy. This did help massively to kill the glissandro, but unfortunately her parents were already gone. As sad of an ending as it was, at least her mind was at peace with it now. Then finally on to the last mission involving Mael, which takes us through the area called the Reacher, which is also the name of this third axon. She visits the painted Alicia and challenges her to a duel, which doing this solo as Alicia was a pain in the ass. The fight has you dodge and parry all of her abilities that mirrors Mael's, but they seem twice as fast, and my dodging skills couldn't match it to start off with. After you win the duel, you offer her a fresh start. All she wants is to be with her family, so we abide by those wishes. This then completes Mael's final mission, which maxes out her relationship level, unlocking the Mael trophy. So with every single relationship maxed out and the expedition's bond stronger than ever, we return to Lumiere for one final time, with Mael's forces ready to take on Renoir's army. Now make sure that you're strapped in for this one, because the enemies that you'll fight in this area are no joke, especially this final enemy that's blocking the path to Renoir. I do recommend using Minoko in this fight to get this enemy's ability, since it does come in clutch later on in the post-story stuff. So it's time for the final fight, and what a badass arena that we get to fight in. But it turns out Renoir isn't alone. He changes himself into his curator form, but he also summons the two axins to help him. Okay, well that's just not fair at all, is it? You've got Visages that gives him shields, and then when you deplete his power for the first time, Cyrene also gives all of his health back. Luckily for us, the team are aided themselves, but this time by Aline, as she enters the canvas in an injured state because of our previous fight with her. Refusing to let Renoir destroy the canvas, she summons the paintress to take out Cyrene for us. Oh man, this music is just so damn good. No wonder why the game won Game of the Year for Best Music. Anyway, his second phase brings some new moves in. As you can see, I didn't last very long with them. Plus this flying attack, which again, as you guessed it, was pretty unparable on my first go. For a final boss fight, I did spend quite a decent amount of time on it. So the feeling when I ended his second phase with a clutch attack from Mael just made me feel so whole. Like after an incredible long journey, we'd finally made it to the very end. With no more tricks up his sleeve, Renoir shows the pain that Verso's death has caused to his family, and that he didn't want to lose Mael, but she makes him see some sense, since the expedition was like another family to her. So seeing how much they meant to Mael, he accepts her intentions as he says a final goodbye. Now Verso had been pretty quiet this entire time, because seeing his mother for the first time in a long while, he rushes through the portal. Popping the end trophy for reaching the end, Mael also follows him as the pair discover this kid who's painting a canvas. Now this is what's left of Verso's soul, and this is where the game throws a massive curveball towards you, since you are forced to make a very important choice. You either pick Verso, who wants to destroy the canvas, freeing Mael and helping her live her actual life as opposed to living a fake one, or picking Mael to keep the canvas and the memory of him alive so that she can feel whole and have a purpose rather than just being stuck in a voiceless body back in the real world. Now, I was genuinely sat here for about 5 minutes trying to weigh out the pros and cons of each decision, but my overall choice was with Verso, as after a very quick fight, we defeat Mael and send her back. Now, because of that, we do witness the rest of the expedition fading away, in a way that actually made me feel bad for my decision, but there was no turning back, as we see the Desandre family mourning over Verso's grave, saying their goodbyes to not just him, but to the expedition for one final time. But before we do that, because this game was nominated the Game of the Year and in fact deservingly won, sandfallinteractive dropped us some added content during the event. And although it doesn't actually have any trophies tied to it, it's definitely worth adding to the video. So it takes us through an area called Verso's Drafts, which was inspired by Verso's childhood, since it kind of had that Wonderland style aesthetic to it, which as you can see, many different gestuals enjoying the fun. Now, because Verso, Mael and Minoko were max level, all of the enemies didn't really pose much of a threat, so I spent most of my time speaking to all the different gestuals, since some of them actually had some quests and then some of them just had some fun dialogue to listen to. It is a few hours of fun gameplay, but the cherry on top was the boss at the very end. In fact, Esquier's cousin Obscur. Now when it comes to a boss fight, this one ticked every single box. The soundtrack was just banging.
Time to end this.
and when it came to Obscur's moves, they were very fun to learn. His phase 2 did ramp up his original attacks, with a few new ones added in to mix things up. And then if you thought Simon's Gamage move was ruthless, Obscur wants to destroy the world with one final attack. But gladly, with it being a gradient attack, the parry window was very generous. So I was able to parry his move without fail, defeating the mighty Obscur. So overall, although it wasn't a full DLC, it was a very nice way of thanking the fans for the support for this game. With that done, let's get on to the post-story trophies. So after defeating Renoir and finishing the main story with a total of 38 trophies out of 56, I was pretty confident jumping back into the game to clear up the remaining 17 trophies needed for the plat. And oh how I didn't know what was in store for me. So let's start with some of the easier tasks. So all 6 of the playable characters have a trophy tied to each of them. I only had my Ls and CLs left, which required me to use the per se ability on a marked target whilst in virtuo stance, and then to consume 24 Tel on a single target during Twilight. I also managed to reach level 66 during this too, which unlocked the Trailbreaker trophy. Next up I had the collectibles / miscellaneous trophies to get. So in total there are 9 gestuals lost in the canvas, and every time you save one back at camp, this gestual called Sastro will reward you after each rescue, but I'm only interested in the trophy itself. So once all 9 were saved, the Lost Gestuals trophy will pop. Then there are 33 music records that for the most part, as long as you're thorough, you'll find most of them. The last one I got was actually tied to the Endless Tower, and although the name states it's endless, there is in fact an end, where you have to face a variety of enemies and bosses, with the 33rd and final challenge fight being both the Paintress and the Curator. Once you defeat them, you'll get both the Endless trophy for completing the tower, and then the 33rd record unlocking the Connoisseur trophy. Then I had the Feat Collection trophy for acquiring all of Monoko's skills, and since I have been using him as one of my main 3 expeditions from the start, I wasn't missing many. So after defeating the Gross Tate, I obtained the trophy. Now alongside getting those, I was able to grind enough items to level a weapon to its max level, and then I managed to complete all of the optional side quests which were given by these White Nevron NPCs, which unlocked the Aiding the Enemy trophy. Now onto the more grindy part, and that was the rest of the bosses. So some of them aren't as much of a challenge, like the Chromatic Batank, which you just need to defeat it before it flees, and then this fellow called Sprong, which you get his trophy too. But that Cheetah Picto is definitely more of a reward to be happy about. Then I had a rematch with the Lampmaster, because remember, we tell he didn't kill it before Gustav's death. This time he obviously hits a lot harder this late into the game, but it wasn't too soon till I got the trophy for defeating him. Then you had this bitch called the Serpent Fair, who takes all of your AP and then gets a ton of shield because of it, making this fight impossible at times. So parrying was my main way of gaining that stolen AP and dealing damage to him. Then with a final standout to finish him off, I obtained his trophy. Then for the penultimate fight, which we had the challenge of fighting the painted version of Clair, who had been imprisoned within the Flying Manor. As expected, this fight was no joke. Harnessing the same painted powers as her parents, she summons painted versions of previous Fort Nevrons, plus after every successful turn, she heals herself. I got incredibly lucky with an 8+ million attack by Monoko, and then following that a 13+ million by Mael to finish off the fight. As we reach the end of this platinum playthrough, we have but only 1 more area and 3 more trophies to tackle. So we enter Renoir's Draft, so already by the name I was dreading what was to come. So by this point, most of my expedition members were above level 90, but because I still had to get the Survivor trophy for reaching level 99 with any character, this was the best place to grind it, since near the end of the level there are 3 different fights that you can earn over 1 million XP per fight from. For myself, it only took me a few hours to rinse and repeat, but the trophy soon popped. Now with that done, we can move on to the final fight from getting this platinum. This super boss is Simon, a previous member of Expedition Zero and an old friend of Verso's. He had been trapped down in the abyss after being defeated by Renoir whilst trying to save the love of his life, Clair. So I'd say he's got some pent up anger that is coming straight our way, and I mean, I don't blame him. Now, for the start of the fight, I was actually feeling pretty good about it. My damage was decent since it allowed me to complete his first phase without failing, but his second phase replicates his phase 1 attacks, but they are multiplied and quicker, so it did take me a few tries to learn the timing for them. Then, like nothing I've seen before, he has a move that is undodgeable and unparryable, where it just wipes out your entire team, forcing you to use the rest of the expedition, which wasn't going to work for me since both Lune and CL were severely underleveled and under-equipped, so I had to think of a different way. Now I'd say it was more luck than skill, but I saved my gradient charges so that I could stun Simon at the right time, skipping that turn and therefore that attack. Then with one last Stendhal attack, I could proudly say that clairobscur Expedition 33 was finished, with the Simon's Boss trophy popping. Then shortly after picking up his and in fact the final journal of the game gave me the Follow the Trail trophy and thus cementing us as the greatest expedition in history. Well, to start, as an indie company and their first major release, they absolutely smashed it out of the park. Since there isn't really much that I can critique them on. All of the characters in the way that they look and the voice acting behind them were incredible, plus Jennifer English fully deserved a Game of the Year award for best performance. Now, like myself, if you're not a massive turn-based fan, I still really enjoyed the combat, since adding all the different picto abilities, it really spices up the gameplay, since you're able to create a playstyle that fits your liking. Then finally, the story. I mean, there's no game that I've played that has even a similar concept to what E33 has, and unfortunately, I doubt we'll get another game like this for a long time. And leave your comment/opinion on your thoughts on Expedition 33, and whether it was your Game of the Year or not. Join me next time as we jump back into Resident Evil as we tackle Resident Evil 7 and the new first-person frights and horrors that were yet to come. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.